Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm Susan Lynn. I'm a psychic and a medium and a spirit navigator. And you know what? You already know. My name is Susan. I'm addicted to astrologers. You already know this. You already knew I was going to say it. Here I am. I found another one. They just seem to wander through my universal backyard. And I'm like, hey, look, there's another astrologer. And then I get a reading. And then I'm like, wow, people need to know about this astrologer because frankly, we all need all the help we can get, right? We really do. I know I do. Maybe you good. Maybe you're like so good. You're like, Susan, I'm good. I got this figured out. In which case, leave me your phone number. But anyway, I don't have it figured out. I am always looking for help. And I found Aubrey here, and she has been so helpful to me. And she's really different than the other astrologers that I've had on my channel. And that's why I'm excited to have her on my channel. And with that, I want to introduce you to Aubrey Houdeshell. I think I just massacred your name. But thank you so much for coming on. How are you today?
I am good. How are you? I'm excited to be here. And you did fine. How to shell. You did it. Like you did.
I kind of slid in. It was kind of like 3 beers at the bar kind of pronunciation, but it was okay. So you guys, you know why I love her? Well, besides that, you're going to see her personality is so fun. So it really helps to get a reading from someone who's personable because otherwise you're like, it's like watching paint dry and you're like, it's hard to focus. Let's just face it. They're giving you good information and you're like, wait, was I supposed to pay attention to that? But Aubrey really brings this astrology to life and makes it relevant and pertinent to you. And the other thing I think is interesting that you guys probably need this help. Okay. I'm not trying to say something, but I'm trying to say something. Okay. Y'all know I've been talking about shadow work for a long time. Not that I do it, I just talk about it. But she's got a great oracle deck called the Oracle of Pluto, and it's about your shadow. And I've used this deck. Aubrey, just pretend like I'm sorry, I'm pretending like you're not there, but I need to talk to my peeps.
Totally
Okay. I've used this, I've used this deck like 4 times. It's been right on the money every single time. Now, what I like about it, I'm just going to show you some things. You can get it on Amazon. It's like less than $16. This would be a nice holiday gift for you. So the art is just beautiful, right? It really is. So here's the world card. But what I think is interesting, and I didn't catch on immediately, is it's shadows. Do you see the hands making the shadow? The old timey shadows on the walls. I'm like, that is so cool. So this is tiger, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, fox. It's a beautiful artwork, and I also want to shout out to your artist because you work with an artist. How do you pronounce her last name? It's Rose. Is it Ides?
Yep. Ides, like the Ides of March.
Rose Ides is the artist. I mean, you guys, this really. So I want to ask Aubrey some questions, and also before I forget, she has a book. You guys, this book, Cosmic Symposium, the Cosmic Symposium. It's the astrology book you didn't know you needed. I didn't know I needed this astrology book. I have a lot of astrology books. I have a lot of astrologers. I can't make heads or tails of any of it. And I'm like over here reading this thing at breakfast. Okay. So it's super good. You can get this on Amazon too. So I want to ask you some questions. Now that I have you and I've studied your things, I've gotten a reading from her, highly recommend. But I want to know about shadow work. How did you're an astrologer, you're a writer, obviously, but you're an astrologer. Why and how did you even think about shadow work? Did you come to that through astrology or on its own?
No, I definitely came to it through astrology. As you may have guessed, I have a little bit of an obsession with Pluto, and work very closely with Pluto. Pluto does a lot of important things in my own chart. And so just have sort of naturally felt drawn to everything that Pluto encompasses, which includes shadow work, right? So, there's a lot of intersections between like astrology and psychology and all of it. So I sort of, in my own, I will say, individual spiritual journey, also came across the concept of the shadow through Jung, right? And it
Through
was just,
Jung, through the
yeah, yeah,
psychologist Jung?
correct,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, so the shadow is his, right? That was sort of his prolific contribution to the psychology field among many of other things. But once I learned about that, I was like, oh, this is literally what Pluto is asking us to do in the chart and in our lives. And so Rose, who, yes, is a very talented, I mean, insanely. I use the word prolific with her actually, and her artwork. And she had this concept of the shadow puppets and the artwork. And she was like, you know, we ended up partnering, and it just, to me, I was like, this is obviously like a Pluto deck. Shadow work, we're doing it. And so again, once that concept kind of came into my awareness, I was like, oh yeah, like this is Pluto. I started offering a reading that specifically is tailored to Pluto and what, you know, it's sort of representation in your chart. And these days I just call it the Pluto reading, but in the beginning I called it shadow work reading. So yeah.
So why does Pluto equal shadow work? What about Pluto makes it the shadow planet or the shadow whatever?
Yeah. So, well, it's a multifold answer, right? So first of all, Pluto being this archetype of Hades, the lord of the underworld, right? And very much of Pluto's domain is sort of considered to be like the underworld, the subconscious mind, which of course is where the shadow resides, right? Is within our sort of subconscious mind. Pluto is a lifelong journey, right? Our Plutonian karma that we're sort of unraveling. Is something that we do across the course of our lives. It's a cyclical journey. So we just like circle back to those themes time and again in perpetuity across our lives. And we're always like peeling back the layers, right, with Pluto. And we're really seeking not only to know this kind of like deeply rooted karmic wound, if you will, with Pluto, but we're ultimately seeking to be in relationship with it and to find a way to empower that part of ourselves, which is the very nature of shadow work, you know, through that psychological lens. So it's honestly like saying the same thing two different ways, I feel. Yeah.
That is awesome. So if you use the cards, so let's say that that I use the cards and I pulled the snake card and it says that you're shedding your skin and you're going to be maybe going on this spiritual endeavor or spiritual sort of awakening, let's say, right? You're becoming maybe even somebody new, right? Because you're shedding. It's very interesting because the snake sheds its skin, but it's still a snake. You know what I mean? But the outer layer, something has changed, right? So would you say that these cards kind of help you tap into that shadow, into that what this to me what I like about things like this is there's a whole lot going on in our subconscious that we're just not aware of, right? We're in our brain, we're thinking, got to go to work, got to pay the bill, got to go here, go there, make dinner. None of that, the universe just doesn't give a damn about any of that, right? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it really helps. It really helps to find out what's the hidden, what is really happening inside. Because I always tell people it's projected all around you. If you want to know what's happening on the inside, look at your relationships, look at your boss, look at your kids, look at how all these things are around you. So the thing about this is you can kind of use this as a shortcut to find out what's happening underneath the surface. Does that make sense to you? Am I getting that
Oh,
sort
you
of
know,
right?
that is, yeah, 100% the intention behind the way that the deck was written. That is precisely what I am, you know, sort of hoping to aid people in doing, is getting in touch, yeah, with those kind of, you know, subconscious underlying motivations, and also to, you know, kind of aid in the Plutonian cycles that we go through, right? And the work that it inevitably sort of asks us to do. And so, yes, the snake as a beautiful metaphor of like, yes, we're going through the transformation and the shedding, because that's often what we're doing when we're engaging in shadow work and any kind of like Pluto themed work. You are going to transform, you are going to let things go, but you're becoming more yourself, right? And you're sort of always yourself. And you know, as Jung would say, we are not looking to eradicate the shadow. It's a valid part of ourselves, the equal part of ourselves, right? That's sort of just underneath the surface of our conscious awareness. And we're looking to bring it into the light and to make the unconscious conscious, and to integrate and sort of empower those parts of ourselves instead. Because also so much of shadow work is rooted in like shame, right? Or
shame. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, shame, fear, rejection. They're usually the parts of ourselves that we view as being like bad or undesirable in some way. And it's like, wow, that's still a valid part of yourself. So it's all around that journey of self-knowledge and also acceptance.
Acceptance and forgiveness. And I'm going to throw another level on that. I kind of feel like when we come into this life as a baby, we have our standard operating system installed, which is our soul contract, right? Like we know what we're doing. But the problem is we're born into a family, we're born with astrology, we're born with numerology, and all those things start chipping away at that soul contract, at that knowledge. And it actually gets overwritten. The parents say this, society says this, your best friends in school said that. And all of a sudden, you're so far away from who you were supposed to be when you came here. So to me, shadow work is about also going back to the original version of me, that wanted to do this work, that wanted to be on YouTube, I guess. I don't know. Maybe there's YouTube on Venus or wherever the hell I'm from. I don't know. But anyway, and it's not Venus. It's probably like some skanky planet, but that's okay too, because I'm
Jupiter,
good with my
right? It's Jupiter, your South Node in Sagittarius.
Thank you. I'm good with it. I'm good. I'm my shadow. No shame. No shame in my game, girl. So anyway, I feel like that this is so important because people are like, what is my soul contract? I think this is one of the ways you can figure it out using these cards, but also just doing shadow work. You can get shadow work workbooks on Amazon. Now you also offer a shadow work session, which is the one I ordered because I'm all about the party life. I'm not
That's not the session that we did. No,
I'm not about the hard stuff. I'm like, I'm not gonna get under my shadow. So I just bought the deck. I'm like, let me do it, and I could cry in my own
myself. Yeah,
privacy in my home. But so tell me about the shadow. How do you do a shadow reading for somebody? Do you use their chart?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So in the beginning, like I said, it was called shadow work. Now it's literally just called a Pluto reading. But yes, we pull up the chart, and we have several karmic placements within our chart. Pluto is just one of them. But because again, Pluto really representing that sort of like shadow work archetypal process, that is the lens that I like to approach a lot of it, though not all of it, through. And yes, we will absolutely look at like, where is Pluto in your chart? What does that sort of mean and do? What is it asking of you? And I also like to look at transiting Pluto, which we now have Pluto in Aquarius. That just happened, for the next 20 years. So it is actually a very interesting sort of transitional time for all of us as far as Pluto is concerned and what it's going to mean. But yeah, we'll absolutely unpack the karma in the chart, which I agree with you. We're always like doing this work, kind of trying to get back to ourselves and figure out why we decided to manifest and incarnate, here now, and what it is that we're trying to do. I think also perhaps like the most succinct way to describe Pluto in the chart is that it is the next evolutionary step in your soul journey.
Oh, now you got my attention. Now I need a reading. Wait a minute. The next step, like if you'd have put it like that, I would have been like, I need that reading. I need that reading. The next step in our
Pluto
evolutionary
and then the lunar nodes, which we talked about during our session a little bit. Both of those kind of combine to be like, yeah, here's what you're here to develop and do to evolve on your soul journey.
And so you talk about that with the Pluto reading that you do.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that's fascinating. I have never considered Pluto like that. Why would you consider Pluto the shadow, the subconscious, but how did you get to it's the next evolutionary step? Explain that, if you don't mind.
It's a very common concept actually in modern evolutionary astrology. Like we look to Pluto to say like, hey, this literally has to do with like the evolution of the soul. Like I said, it's not the only one, but we cannot evolve if we're not doing the work, right? And if we're not grappling with these patterns, because that's ultimately what Pluto is, right? It's this pattern that we keep perpetuating. And as somebody who does believe in multiple lives, I look at Pluto as like, okay, here's a wound, an issue that we had that did not start in this lifetime, but that we are continuing to work out, and we're here again to kind of like flip the script and break free from almost like the chains of this pattern that has left us feeling cut off from our power, and or like just disempowered in some way. So yeah, that's how I got there.
Okay, that's fascinating. I have never had it put to me like that, so I think that's fascinating, and very helpful. We're all, I don't necessarily want to dig around in my shadow, but once you said, once you said that, hey, this is also the next step in your evolution, I'm like, I'm ready for that, right? So I think it's fascinating. What would you tell us? Is there anything that you could tell us as a collective or as the viewers? What broad strokes, what we might be expecting as far as Pluto going into Aquarius?
Yes. Yes, we could talk about this all day. I have plenty of thoughts on Pluto and Aquarius. But so Pluto, just as like a quick foundational drive-by, okay? Pluto is the only planet in astrology that does not transit every sign in like a set time period, right? So because Pluto's orbit around the sun is more oval, like kind of like an elliptical instead of a true circle, the stints that Pluto has in each sign varies. So for example, we just did Pluto in Capricorn. That started back in 2008. It just ended. We'll never do Pluto in Capricorn again. Like, as long as literally any of us are alive on this planet, it will be several generations before somebody sees Pluto in Capricorn again. But so it was just there for 16 years, right? So now Pluto is going to spend 20 years, even longer than it just did in Capricorn. It will be in Aquarius for the next 2 decades. So things to consider with Aquarius. Both Pluto and both Aquarius and Capricorn are traditionally ruled by Saturn. There's a little bit of an overlap here, right? There's a little bit of continuity in some of the things that both of those signs are sort of concerned with. And a lot of it has to do with the systems and structures that are in place within our society. When we think of Capricorn, one way to think about that or interpret it is the patriarchy, right? And the governmental powers that be, and Capricorn really rules over tradition, right? So these long-standing traditional values, etc. Aquarius comes in and is like, yes, I too am very concerned with the powers that be and the systems and structures that are in place within our society, right? And this kind of intersection of all the socio-political things that entails. But where Capricorn comes in and is like, we love rules and regulations and playing by the book, Aquarius is like, we're going to throw the book out the window, right? We're going to break the rules to make our own. And Aquarius is ultimately the sign of the collective, right? It's a very social justice oriented sign. Aquarius is the sign of the future, so it's hyper progressive. Okay, Aquarius is living on the bleeding edge of all things, including technology. Okay, so Pluto coming in and forcing all of us, both on an individual and a collective level, to grapple with a lot of these Aquarian themes, including the process of like, oh, we have to deal with the shadow, right? We have to deal with corruption. We have to deal with, the concept of power in general, right? So power in its sort of shadowy form and power in its most like benevolent, evolved form. But with Pluto, we always have to deal with the shadow first, right? We have to deal with the destruction before we can get to the creation, right? And that cycle of transformation, life, death, rebirth, etc. So a lot of people online, have been like, oh, Pluto and Aquarius, power to the people, and all this stuff. And it's not that I think that that's wrong. Okay. I absolutely do think that that is the direction that we will head, but that's not what we're going to start with. You know what I mean? Um, Unfortunately, the shadowy manifestation of Aquarius can be the dystopian
Oh no.
regime, for example. That's just one example. Doesn't mean that's what we'll necessarily do. Okay. But then when people also think about, like, oh, we're going to have this revolution, power to the people, blah, blah. Okay. Show me a peaceful revolution throughout history.
Yeah. Right.
And we could unravel that, like I said, all day long. Some examples that I will point to right now. Okay. Georgia, the country, right? They're having their riots and their revolution. Syria, what's his face just fled the country and they have overthrown him. Obviously, we have all kinds of things that are transpiring here in this country, including the gentleman that decided to murder the CEO of
Yes.
United
Yes.
Healthcare. Okay.
Yes.
Oh my God, France is having like a weird collapse within their governmental systems around the prime minister. So Pluto in Aquarius, has its foot on the gas. It's only been there for a handful of days, and like here we are. But these are all questions that we're going to kind of be forced to answer, right? Aquarius ultimately seeks to implement and build systems that are fair, accessible, equal for all people, right? It really does want to give the power to the people, but the actual tangible reality of what it means to get there, that's a journey. Okay. Other things that we can maybe see, I think we'll look obviously at technology, its usefulness, what happens when this bleeding edge technology is in the hands of the corrupt. AI will, of course,
Yeah.
continue to come forward and play a central role that way. I think cryptocurrency will probably play an important role here as well. Um, Again, I could go on for days, but does that answer your question?
Yeah. So do you have an opinion, and just strictly just off the cuff opinion? Do you think you're going to prefer Aquarius and Capricorn, or prefer Aquarius, Pluto and Aquarius? You're going to prefer one or the other, Capricorn or Aquarius?
Well, I obviously harbor some pretty progressive political views. So, I think
Harbor, love that.
well, it's interesting because everyone in my sort of like millennial generation, right? We all have Pluto in Scorpio as our like natal Pluto placement.
Oh,
And so while Pluto is in Aquarius, all of us are going through what is known as our Pluto square, right? So transiting Pluto, making this tense aspect to all of our Plutos. So at least on an individual level, all of us millennials have some tension that's going to happen and some more karma, right? To like work out
wow.
there.
Wow.
Also my North Node is in Aquarius. So we're talking about the evolution of a soul and what it is that I'm here to do to like evolve. It's the Aquarian thing. So in a way, I think I will enjoy Pluto and Aquarius a lot. And in other ways, I might just be like, I'm having a hard time. So
Right,
yeah,
right, right.
yeah.
So that's fascinating too. And I'm sure this is not new to astrologers, but to me, it's like the light bulb just went off.
Mm.
How, and maybe because we're in this kind of dicey time right now, but you've got a whole generation of millennials that are going to be affected in this kind of similar way,
Mhm.
at least dealing with the similar energy, how they manifest, or how they, how they respond to the stimulus. The spirit guides always want to say is up to each person. But could that really, how do you think that's going to affect millennials as a cohort dealing with our, and let's just keep it in the United States of America, dealing with our political, unrest?
Yeah, so I think it's a very interesting question. Millennials in particular are sort of unique when we're thinking about Pluto because Scorpio is Pluto's sign that it rules over, right? So all of us, we are the only generation that has Pluto at home in our birth chart. right? And
Ah.
so it really underlines, it kind of emphasizes these ideas of power and power struggles and power dynamics, sex and death, and all of the things that Scorpio and Pluto is saying the same thing twice, right? So it really amps that up. And so when we think about Aquarius, what Scorpio and Aquarius have in common is that they're both fixed signs. Okay, so they get this idea of what they think is good and true and right, and they kind of stay there, right? But the way that Scorpio and Aquarius kind of like show up and live their lives is very different, right? Scorpio being very intense, very passionate, liking to kind of be in the dark and feeling its way around down there, where Aquarius is like feelings, I don't know about those, right? Like Aquarius is very objective, they're very practical, pragmatic. Aquarius is like the scientist, right? Like that's how they like to function, in that very sort of like tangible, practical, maybe not tangible, they can be a little out there, but they like science and technology and logic and all of that, whereas like Scorpio is deeply psychic. And Scorpio kind of shows up and is like, let's merge our souls together, and that's amazing. And Aquarius is like, get away from me, right? Like stay far away from me. So thinking about the current political situation that we're all dealing with, I do think as a whole that millennials, wow, you can never speak about people as a whole or in sweeping generalizations with politics, but a lot of us are very progressive anyway, right? A lot of us are like, yep, let's stop doing all this weird stuff that we've been doing with the government. And and Aquarius kind of wanting to push towards the progressiveness and, again, like the social justice, the equality, the fairness. I think in a way, and this is my own bias, of course, I'm like, yeah, let's do that, right? But I think there will be that push and pull around like the concepts of power, what and of course, like what is comfortable, what is scary, because that's the other thing, is Pluto can bring up a lot of fear, right? And so I think millennials with their Scorpio Pluto can also have a lot of fear about things. And like, we're just gonna have to work it out. I wish I had a better answer for you, but
No, that's fascinating. And the fear, especially with Aquarius, it could be like fear that's not real, that is sort of out there. It's sort of like in the ethers, you know what I mean? And Scorpio is not in the ether. Scorpio is literally in the mud, in the ground. So
right,
that's
Scorpio's in the dirt.
yeah, they're
Scorpio's
in the
in the
dirt.
dirt, yes.
So that's going to be very interesting. So that is fascinating. So one other question about that, which is what I'm seeing, what I think might, and again, this is also, like you said, talking about a collective is pretty much impossible. But what I see, especially with that guy that did the thing to unalive the CEO, he's become a folk hero.
Yeah.
This guy, people are tattooing his face on their, body. And people are, in New York, they had a dress alike contest where people dressed up like him. So, it's like really he's become this sort of Robin Hood, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if that's one way that the Pluto and Aquarius could sort of yank the power from the government, give it to the people, but then the people are like, they're not necessarily any better with the power than the government, and you get vigilantism, you get this, extrajudicial kind of energy. Do you feel like that could be a thing with Pluto and Aquarius, or?
Yeah. So I think, I've been talking to my partner about this extensively. To me, the response, the kind of backlash from the general public around, this man being executed in broad daylight, and the gentleman that did the executing, it has nothing to do specifically with Brian Thompson, right? Like
Right.
the pushback and the general sentiment around things is rooted in the systems, in this case, the insurance companies that people have been fed up with for a long time and that they feel are unfair and are not meeting their needs. And that is, oh my God, the perfect example of Pluto and Aquarius and this sentiment and what's going to start happening. I honestly, like, one way that I think that this will sort of manifest, I think we'll almost see this like return to a very specific era, maybe like the 60s and 70s is what I'm gonna say, where we had like the folk revolutionary, you know, type music and the sentiments and wanting to break free from the systems that were like, hey, this is not working. You know, obviously, um, it's sticky for me personally, I guess. I share a lot of their sentiments, okay? But I'm also like, somebody actually died,
Yeah,
right?
no,
And
I
like,
get it.
you
No, I
have
get
the
it.
wife and children, and that's not something to celebrate,
Right.
okay? But when I read the comments of, you know, from people on videos and news articles and whatever, and it's all people sharing examples of United Healthcare denying them this life-saving, like crucial treatment that they needed. You know, the first thought I had when I heard the news about this guy, I was like, well, something either happened to him or somebody close to him that pushed him to this place where he planned to do this. And I still think that. Obviously, there's a ton of information that will be forthcoming now that they have arrested somebody. But yes, anyways, I'm going off on a tangent. I do think that this is a perfect example of
Yeah.
the Pluto and Aquarius wave that is coming. People are going, like, people are fed up. And we're in this strange sort of tipping point within our country. We were deeply polarized, and, you know, maybe something like this unites the people, and that's fine. But yeah, we are going to see an uprising and like public outcry, public unrest from people being like, no, we're not doing this. It's been going on for too long.
Yeah. And I think it's just a continuation of our evolution. You know what I mean?
Mhm,
We had
mhm,
our snouts full of the patriarchal top down kind of energy, and now we're going into more of an expansive energy, where there aren't any rule, you know, like, are these rules? Should we follow these rules? Like, who's making the rules, right? So that's going to be it's going to feel, and I would just say to my viewers, it's going to feel really, it could feel scary, really, because
mhm,
you're like, wait a minute, we like systems, we like
mhm,
rules, we like to know that the light's going to turn green and I'm going to go, and our whole world is really rule bound.
mhm,
So when you start having these breaking down of systems and institutions, it can feel a little weird or scary. So
mhm.
just know, I mean, do you have any advice for people? I mean, other than well, yeah, do you have any advice for people for that? For
Yeah, so to your point, we need rules, we need systems, we need structures. And again, circling back to this idea of Capricorn and Aquarius both being ruled by Saturn, which is about structures and systems and rules. Okay. Sustainability is the key word when I think of Saturn signs. Okay. So, yes, there will be a breaking down of things, but inevitably, in this push from the people and being like, hey, we don't want to do this anymore, we still have to have a system in place.
yeah,
We still have to come up with structure and rules, and whatever the new thing is, it still has to be sustainable, right? So we're gonna have to grapple with that reality. The piece of advice that I have is that everything happens so slowly with Pluto. Okay, at Pluto as the slowest moving planet out there, it's not like every single day is gonna be like, you know, the political unrest and the people, and it's going, you know, it's becoming increasingly more insane. No, okay. It is something that is like molasses. You know what I mean? Slow. And yes, again, very cyclical. We'll circle back to these same kind of like Aquarian, Plutonian themes over the next 2 decades. But it's not like we're all going to wake up tomorrow and the robots have taken over and like, you know what I mean? So it's like, fear, when we're
so
acting from a fear-based place, nothing good is happening. Right. So it's like we have to stay rooted in reality. Um, yeah, I think that's my advice.
Nice. And stay rooted in your life,
Yeah.
right? When especially with this sort of expansive energy, we're going to want to expand. We're going to want to, maybe expand our thinking or even expand our worries and our fears. And I think what really is going to be helpful is double down on you, work on you. Every time you start worrying about anything political or whatever, this is your wake up call to say, what do I need to do for me? Do I need to drink some water? Do I need to do a little meditation? Do I need to take a nap? Do I need to go outside? If you will just continue to redirect yourself back to you while everybody else is running around, crazy, you're growing. There's nothing to stop you from growing in this time, actually, nothing. So,
Mhm.
so I think just redirect back to you and pull some cards, do some journaling, ask for advice, watch the signs. You know what I mean? All those things are going to be really helpful to help you stay grounded and to
Mhm.
give you a sense of place and presence when maybe other people are not grounded and acting cray cray.
Yeah. And like if the things that you're seeing on the news and social media and whatever are causing you anxiety, turn it off.
Turn it
Like
off. Definitely
don't
turn it off.
don't fight with strangers online. That's really my advice for Pluto and
We need
Aquarius.
that on t-shirts. Why don't we have t-shirts with that? Don't fight with strangers online. Back in the day it was don't take candy from strangers. Today it's don't fight with strangers online. That's the
Yeah.
new thing. That is so true. It is so true. Take her advice, everybody. Okay, so I want to switch gears because Aubrey also does, well, she, like if you need just an astrology reading, like where she can read your natal chart, you guys are going to need to have your birth time. So hopefully you can find your birth time, your exact birth time. And I would also say from my own experience that I've gotten readings from many different astrologers. Obviously, I'm an addict. But anyway, I love how they each illuminate or bring a different energy and different part of my chart to life, which again is working on me. Any work you put towards yourself is going to pay off in dividends. Any money you spend on you is going to pay off in dividends. Maybe not tomorrow, and maybe it's a little hard to track, but I think if you say, I'm going to make 2025 the year of me, and I'm going to get some readings and I'm going to do some work on myself, 2026 is going to be a lot better for you,
Yeah.
not to mention 2025, right? So Aubrey also does, natal chart readings. You probably do transit readings, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing, so she does all the things the astrologers do, plus this Pluto reading, which is fascinating. And then the thing that I got help with was astrocartography. That is basically astrology, mapping your astrology of where would be a good place for you to live. Now, the other thing is, you might remember the spirit guide said 2025 is going to be musical chairs. I don't know why. I just report the news. Okay. We're all going to be moving, whether that's moving out of your apartment, your house, moving out of a friendship, moving into a new friendship, moving out of a job into a new job, perhaps even moving into a new city, a new state, a new country. Not that we're running from anything. This is not why. It's just that the energy is just we're just ready. We're just ready to move. And there's going to be a lot of, and there is cause and effect, right? So you have somebody in the presidency, they make rules and regulations, and that causes businesses to do things, which could cause you to be transferred or to lose your job. So there's just lots of reasons that you might be moving around. Okay. Now, if you're not familiar with astrocartography, I'm going to tell you what I think about it. And it's going to be completely layman, but then she can tell us the real thing. So what I loved about it, I've had two or three of these done. And and I found Aubrey on Threads, you guys. This is what happens. Spirit's like, oh, I like all her content. I'm like, that's cool. And then she said something about this Pluto deck, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. And then I didn't do anything. And then she said something a couple of weeks later, and this is how you know you're guided. You're like just clicking on the link and you're buying the thing, and you don't even know you don't even know. That's guidance, right? I bought the Pluto deck. 3 days later, I'm like back on her site, booking an appointment, and I was like, isn't this that woman that I bought that deck from? And I look, I'm like, this is the woman of what the dead. I'm like, oh, okay, spirit. So when I got this reading, what I really like about how she does her astrocartography readings is there's sort of the big picture, Jupiter good, Venus good, right? Some things are not as good, right? Some things are a little less good for you. And so an astrologer can, even you can pull down your own astrocartography online for free. If you know anything about astrology, you can literally look it up and you can do it for free. Here's what I loved about what Aubrey did, which was very different, was she went underneath that layer. Like that's the top layer, that, Jupiter good. She kept digging down into the kind of the nitty gritty of the details of why certain states were better for me and in what way. And what I loved about it too is she described it like, well, so this area is kind of intellectual. You'll do well in your career. You'll meet great people. You'll have a lot going on. But this area over here is kind of like a warm hug, kind of like a home. You're still going to be having all those things, it's just you're going to be successful, whatever, but it's going to be homey and you know what I mean? So that's the kind of help I need, right? Like I needed, and it doesn't matter which you choose, they're both good, but she helped me understand it in a new way. Okay, so if you are thinking about moving, or the last thing I will say, because I thought this was fascinating too, is that if you've traveled at all and you know that certain cities light up for you or certain countries light up for you, I promise you they're going to be on your astrocartography, because everything I was like, yes, 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 yes. But what I thought was fascinating, even if you're not going to be moving, you can travel to the country or the city or the state and pick up. It's like when you're on the video game and you veer over here to get the little extra credit prize. That's what it's like. So I also learned that there's a country that I could travel to or move to, but I could even travel to and I could get a lot of good energy from that. And who doesn't need good energy? So getting a reading like this of astrocartography could also be really helpful for you, especially if you're planning on moving and you don't know where to go. Okay. Did I just massacre
Yes,
that?
beautiful. No, oh my God, please. That was amazing. Yes, so the beautiful, I will give my 30-second elevator pitch here. So as Susan said, it is a form of locational astrology. It is all based off of your own personal birth chart. So we still need that same information. And basically what happens is it takes, all of the different placements in your chart and translates them into these longitude and latitude lines, throws them up on a world map, and it sort of like means and does various things. Depending on how knowledgeable you are with what the different planets kind of mean and do in astrology, can be kind of intuitive from there around like, oh, my sun line does this and my Mercury line does that, and that's fine. Okay. Part of it, of course, is contingent upon your own chart. And, maybe your sun is very powerfully placed, and so definitely we should go to a sun line. Or maybe you have a lot of trouble with your sun, and so maybe a sun line isn't as enjoyable. But there's also general meanings, like I said, that all of the lines do. So the beauty of astrocartography is, and the reason I find it useful, first of all, if you love to travel, this is the reading for you. Okay, this is it. Help you plan your next vacation. Where do you want to go? What do you want to experience? Blah blah blah. But I have done this reading plenty of times for people when they're wanting to move. So astrocartography, the question I love to pose to people when they're coming to get this reading is like, what do you want more of in your life? Like at this point in your life, what are your values? What are you really seeking and looking to experience? For some people, for a lot of people, it's like, I want to find love.
You want to find what? Love?
Love, yeah, love. For others, it's like, I want to go somewhere where my business is going to do amazing. I want to go somewhere where it's easy for me to buy a home, right? These are all just examples. But that there are lines in your astrocartography map that will pinpoint places that will help you to do exactly that. So obviously, we're not going to cover the entire world in an hour-long session, but also to Susan's point, I think it's interesting to also show up and be like, I really like this place and I really like that place, or I feel quite drawn to this place for some reason, even though I've never been there. And I mean, without fail, there is some important astrocartography happening in those locations. Um, I mean, I look at my astrocartography map at least once a week. I'm like,
Why? Why do you look at it so often? Are you just because is it for you? Is it like virtual travel, like virtual?
so yes, I am somebody that loves to travel. If it was up to me and I could just like wave a magic wand about my whole life, I would only travel. Like I would have no responsibilities and I would have endless money and I would just bounce around from place to place to place and see as much of the world as I could. So yeah, so I'm always, poking around in the map. I mean, like, oh, I think I want to travel here. Does that seem like it would be a good place for me? Stuff like that. So yeah.
Fascinating. That is fascinating. So have you ever looked at your map, your astrocartography map and thought, I am not, like this would be so good for me, but I don't ever want to live in this place.
Okay, that's an experience that people have a lot, I will say.
It
Right? Where
is?
it's like,
Well,
yeah,
I
like
mean, I know you gave me an option, like one state, she said, throw a dart. Just throw a
yeah,
dart anywhere in the state and you can live there. And I'm like, I don't want to throw a dart anywhere in that state.
precisely. Okay, so that is
But
the
there were other
experience.
states that I loved. There I had a really an embarrassment of riches. But there was one state I'm like, no thanks.
But that happens all the time. Like, I swear, almost every time that I'm giving somebody an astrocartography reading, I'm like, okay, I'll name some places, right, that fall underneath this line where you can have this influence. And they're always like, I don't want to go there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, no, thank you. Um, and it's like, well, you think that, but if you were to go
Oh my
there on
God.
vacation, for example,
Oh my God.
and and
That's what
just
my guides told me. Oh my
see,
God. They told me the same thing. Go ahead. I'm
it's like,
sorry. Go ahead.
no, but this is it. That's perfect. It's like, and that's why astrocartography is so funny. And I think I even said this to you in our session together. It's
Probably.
like, I can tell you these things until I'm blue in the face about it, but until you actually go there and you're having that kind of firsthand
Right.
experience, it's not going to click all the way
Oh
until that's
my God.
happening.
It's true.
But so in my own astrocartography chart, I have a Jupiter line. Okay, that runs through Western Kansas. Now, yeah, right, exactly. Okay, say less, right? So now I want to tell you, I visit Kansas frequently.
Really?
My mom and my sister live out in Wichita, which is not Western Kansas. Okay, but so I have driven across the entire state of Kansas so many times in my life. I visit Wichita. Oh my God, probably more than I visit anywhere else. Western Kansas is one of the ugliest places I've ever been. Okay. And like, no offense to anybody who lives there. Okay.
Yeah,
Like,
no
not,
offense. Please don't come
but
for us. We love
but
you.
it's not for me. Okay. And so when I learned about my having a Jupiter line that ran through Western Kansas, I was like, what is this? Like, I'm not going to move to Western Kansas to experience the abundance of my Jupiter line. But and especially when I think about, oh, I'm an astrologer, which, and like that bodes so well with the political landscape out there and whatever. They'd probably be like, they're gonna, you're the devil's harlot or something. But I was just
Devil's
kind of like,
harlot.
okay, all right, but again, if I gave it a chance, maybe I would drop down in Western Kansas and be like, this is amazing. And I have all this opportunity that's coming my way and whatever.
Oh
So,
my God. But it's true though. It's true. Like it's energy.
yeah.
We have the predisposal of this is not nice. This isn't for me. I don't like hot. I don't like cold. Whatever, whatever. That's our cultural or whatever. But when you go there, like one of the states, she was so happy because I love this state. Like, and I don't know why. I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, it's green, it's all the things I like, but I'm like, oh my God, I love this state. And she's like, I love that you love that state because that way she knew I got it, that I understood what it feels like energetically to have that feeling in the state that has that good stuff for you. So, but on in a different state, I seem to be, y'all are going to be surprised at this, but arguing with my spirit guides. They keep telling me I'm going to love it, and I keep saying I don't think so. And it's like, of the two places that you told me that would be great for me, it's one of those two places, and I'm like, yeah, but yeah. So it's
It's
interesting. I
conversation.
guess maybe I'll just try it. I mean, why
It's
not?
conversation. See what, go for 5 days, see what it's like. And then if you hate it, you can be like, I told you guys, sorry.
That's right. That's exactly right. Right. I have been for just 2 days and I did love it, but I don't love the weather. So
Yeah.
I don't know how I'm going to get over that. So, but it is. So with you, with your Western Kansas, you might go there and energetically just be so like filled with ideas. Maybe you would just have business ideas or the energy for your
Yeah.
business. I don't know.
So it's interesting because
You
it's a
wouldn't have
Jupiter.
anything else to do.
Well, right. I'm just gonna sit around and think. But it's a Jupiter midheaven line. So it is actually like the best place for my career, right? And like business and like whatever. But okay, in my own chart, and this is a great example for our astrocartography. Okay, so in my own chart, I have Jupiter opposite Neptune. They are opposite each other exactly, like down to the astrological minute, opposite each other. Okay, so
What
they're
does that
always,
mean? Tell me what that
well,
means.
so they're talking to one another.
Yeah, but
Okay.
what,
And it means
are
they're
they different? Like Jupiter is abundance, expansion, Neptune is.
Neptune. Well, Neptune is a lot of things, but
Don't cuss
Neptune
now.
is it's the planet. So first of all, it's the planet of spirituality. Okay, so it is where we look at our psychic gifts. Okay. For example, with your mediumship, I promise you have Neptune prominently placed in somewhere in your chart. Okay. And very often people who have mediumship type gifts really do have a strong Neptune somewhere. Okay. So it's spirituality as our psychic gifts. And it's very creative. Okay. We also see a lot of like musicians,
Photography.
artists, creatives, visionaries that have very strongly placed Neptune energy as well. But it's also the planet of illusion, delusion, right? Like everything sort of dissolves underneath the Neptune, right? Whereas Jupiter, so the material, money and the material dissolving underneath Neptune.
Oh, that's so
And then
wrong.
Jupiter is like, oh, abundance, oh, money, oh, whatever. So them being opposite one another, it creates an interesting dynamic, okay, in my chart and in my life. But what they have in common is that Jupiter is also a very spiritual planet, right?
Oh,
It
it
it,
is
it
really.
yeah, it too points to that kind of connection to the divine and the intuition and all of that. So if I were to go literally anywhere, including Western Kansas, and be underneath this Jupiter line, Neptune is always right there as well. So the two
For
lines are
you. Oh,
directly next to each other. So that's also weird, right? Because you go somewhere and you're like, yes, I have all these ideas and these opportunities and whatever. And Neptune's like, but you're not going to keep the money. Like it's going to like, you know what I mean? And so normally where people would go underneath a Jupiter midheaven line and it's like, yes, I'm climbing the ladder and everybody loves me and I'm making all this money and it's great. Neptune's like, only if you're doing like spiritual work,
that's what I
right?
was
Like
just gonna say.
yeah, only if you're doing spiritual work, only
Girl.
if you're doing like selfless sacrificing, type work. Like I would have to go there and basically like be a saint, you know what
Well,
I
you
mean?
wouldn't spend money on anything. I'm telling you, there would be
Well, and that
nothing to
too.
spend any money on.
No, that as well, right? Because it's like I'm living on my farm. But also because it probably would be a place of solitude, right? Kind of like great
That's true
solitude
too.
living
Sort of like
somewhere.
a monk.
Right, exactly. And that is exactly it. It would be that kind of like secluded, monkish, the nunnery type lifestyle. And they would probably be very profoundly spiritual for me there, which is, I obviously love that. But I'm not trying to live somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. Good
You're
luck.
like, go there, girl.
Good
Just
luck.
go there.
It's like you got like Timu, you got Timu monk. Like you didn't get monk with the craggy, castle and the water, you got Timu. You got like Western Kansas on this farmland. Like what?
No, it's like, oh, you want to
You
go to
need to
Western
upgrade your spirit
Kansas?
guides. You need to get an upgrade.
I know. I'm like, really? We couldn't have done this somewhere pretty. No, again, no offense if anyone lives in Western Kansas,
Well,
but like,
you,
we couldn't have had that going on in like the south of France,
You,
right?
you
In
you need to be looking at
Fiji
your Venus
somewhere.
line or something. You need to change it up, change your line up, and get Venus. Marry somebody very wealthy. It's
Ugh.
got to be a way to round
From
this.
your lips to God's ears, Susan.
I don't know why people say that to me all the time. It never happens. But anyway, we can always try. I'll put in a good word for you.
You're like,
Um,
actually, it's from God to me, and not the other way around.
it's true. It's true. Yes, it's actually very true. They've been trying to call you about your extended car warranty, and you're not
Right?
answering.
Yeah, right.
You're not answering. So, wow, that is fascinating. And so, is there anything else you want to share with the viewers? They can find you at your website. I'm going to read it off. It's graveyardroses.com. I'm going to put it in the description so you'll be able to find that grave, like graveyard, like where dead people are buried, and then roses.com. So, pretty easy, right? And you're on social media. What kind of social media are you on? You're on Threads.
Yep, I'm on Threads. I'm on Instagram. Of course, they all talk to each other. And my handle on there is actually my name. So Aubrey C. Houdeshell, which hopefully Susan will also put in the show notes, because no one knows how to spell my last name, and that's okay. It's a long one also. But yeah, so I'm on there, Threads and Instagram, and I'm on Substack. Writing
Substack, because
starting
you're a
as
writer.
well. Yes, yeah. So that is my name also. I have a Patreon. We kind of talked about that, right? I've got a Patreon that people can subscribe to. And that is it. I don't do TikTok. I don't
Yet.
yet. Yeah.
I just put yet in there. Patreon, you guys, is a membership, so you can join her membership. I would assume that all this is linked in your website.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it's
Okay.
all there. Honestly, I would say the easiest way to connect with me is actually probably on Instagram. Um, just because I have my little link tree that has all of the links in like one place on my profile right there. But yes, it's all there.
Awesome. And I would just say back to her book, The Cosmic Symposium. You guys, this is not over your head astrology. This is, you do kind of have that style of writing that is it's just I don't know how to say except for it's old school. It's not technical. It's just so like here's a section on Venus, right? Um it's just a really good book. Like you don't have to be an astrologer to read this book. You just have to have an interest in astrology. So you guys might want to check this book out. You might want to check out her deck. And are you writing anything? I'll put it that way. Are you in the middle of any new projects?
I am. So
I
first
didn't
I
know if
got
I was supposed to say it or not. I'm
no,
like, let me
it's
just.
okay. No, it's totally fine. I don't mind at all, obviously. But buy all of my books and buy my deck and blah blah blah. No, but I appreciate what you said actually though, because as a person, certainly as an astrologer and a practitioner, I think I would say my main value is making things accessible, right? Making things tangible. A lot of times when we are kind of diving into spiritual things, there's a lot of concepts, etc., that are very nebulous and heady and it's a huge pet peeve of mine, actually, when you hear people spewing out all of these like little buzzwords and whatever, and then they get done talking and you're like, what does that mean? Right? Like that literally means nothing to me. And if you're actually going to embark upon this journey of trying to do the spiritual thing and knowing yourself and understanding things, then you need to understand what you're reading, right? You need to understand what it means. And so that is 100% the lens that I write and talk about everything through. You can thank my Virgo Mercury for that. I'm like, it has to be tangible. So yes, I try to make it as practical, accessible, tangible, understandable as humanly possible. Which was the intention that I, approached that book with. But I have a sextrology book that is coming out in July 9th, 2025. And then I am also under contract for an astrocartography book. And we'll be writing an entire book about that, and that will come out in the second half of 2026.
I think we buried the lead here. Wait. I mean, what the heck just happened? There's a sex astrology, sextrology, sex. Now I've got a whole nother thing to think about and worry about. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, this life is getting more complicated. I just need an app. Somebody make an app. They can put their finger on it, and I can be like, no, or yes. I'm going to run all these tests on you. I'm done with. I just need easy. Okay, sextrology. So, like, does that tell me about that? Like, you figure out your own. Like, this is what I need, or this is what my partner needs,
Both.
or this is what I'm looking for in a partner.
Mm-hmm.
Who's
all,
the sexiest
of the above.
one?
Okay, all of the above. First of all, this is also a specialized reading that I offer if you want to come get one. But second of all, it is, yes, first of all, we have certain placements in our chart that are literally about like love, romance, sex, okay, namely Venus and Mars, though they are not the only ones. But through my own experience, being an astrologer, interacting with people, giving them readings, you probably know this. The two main topics that people want to come get readings about is love and money. Okay. So I talk to people about love all the time. And through my experience, I started to sort of gather my data and be like, there really is something here about like the placements that we have and what they represent and what that sort of means for our wants, needs, and desires in our connections, but also our own like sexual erotic expression. And that, of course, is very fascinating to me. One thing about me, I have Venus as a chart ruler, conjunct Pluto, okay, in Scorpio. Scorpio being the sign that rules over the genitals. So I think about sex a lot, okay? And so I was just like, oh, like there's a whole...
When you're not looking at your own astrocartography to decide where you're going to travel.
Right.
You do need to move to Western Kansas because this monk thing is
to become a nun. I was raised Catholic, so I feel like I can make that joke. Anyways, yes. Okay. But I kind of, again, I just sort of was like, oh, we can really look at the entire chart through that lens of eroticism. And there's a lot that we can kind of unlock, here. And everything I do is to try to help people, right? To help them understand themselves and to ultimately have the information and tools and knowledge to go lead a more fulfilling life. Okay. And in this case, also to have more fulfilling connections with other people. And so I was like, cool, I'm going to start offering this reading, see how it goes with people, do my own sort of field research here. And it ultimately became a book. So, yeah.
You have to be careful when you're talking about sextrology and you say you did your own field research.
I don't mean it like that. Or maybe I do, but it's none of your business. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
That's why you don't want to move to Western Kansas. No, I get it.
Nothing there for me. Yeah.
There's nothing there for you unless you're interested in cows, and probably not your thing.
No, I'm gonna pass on the cows. You're so funny. And yes, but just for clarity's sake, what I mean by field research is my clients.
You're making it worse. She means her clients' astrology and their feedback via a phone. And I'm not even going to go into video. Okay.
We all remember the days of the 1-900 numbers. Okay.
That's true. We do, but it's the best I can do right now. Okay. It's the best I can do. Wow. So that's fascinating. So that book comes out. So you've already written it and it's just in publishing.
Yep. Yes.
Wow.
So that I wrote that in the spring of this year. And it, like I said, it comes out in July. Pre-orders are live if you want to buy it. It's $19, something like that. And yeah, like the cover, I mean, literally, I'm basically just waiting for it to come out at this point. And then, yeah, I'm under contract for the Astrocartography book. I have to submit the manuscript for that in early June, and then that will, of next year, obviously, and then that will come out. I don't have a date for it yet, but in 2026.
2026.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. But you guys can skip ahead of the line and just get the reading.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
You don't have to wait. You can just go get the reading. You can get a lot of readings, apparently. So whatever works, whatever, pour it back into you. If you pour back into you instead of pouring all your energy out, worrying about everything, you're going to come through this a whole person, number one, instead of a broken person. And number two, you're going to come out of this with just a much better life, a much better, happier, more joyous life.
Yes. Amen to that.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on my channel today, Aubrey. Again, you guys check out her website, and it's graveyardroses.com, but I will put all her contact information, including her Substack. If you don't know what that is, check it out. It's getting to be very popular, actually. A lot of people are starting Substacks, and it's typically in the past it's been a subscription service that sometimes you could also access for free, depending on the person offering it. But you would read their writings, like they might write an article, or they might, write a blog or something like that. And since you're a writer, that makes sense that you would have that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Nice.
Well, it's funny because Jupiter's transiting in Gemini right now, and ahead of that, I was like, oh, we're going to see this resurgence in text-based platforms. So Threads, for example, okay, Blue Sky is obviously having a moment as well, and then yeah, Substack. I love it. That's because I just want to blab. I just want to blab at people all day long. So yeah.
So you're blabbing about astrology on Substack? You're just telling people this is like, these are the transits, this is the energy, this is what you might. So it's very informative, I would assume then.
Oh yeah, it's all educational for sure. And yes, it's very much transit based. With when Pluto shifted into Aquarius, I wrote a whole article about that. I will write a whole article about some of the major transits that are coming up for 2025. It's basically my little newsletter that I fire out to people. So
nice. That is awesome. I'll have all her contact information in the description, everybody.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. I have really enjoyed this. So hopefully you'll come back sometime in the future. And you guys all take really good care, and I'll see you again really soon. All right.